The Sentapol Wars. Chapter 9. When Felix and Phil stepped outside of Star Barrels, it was dark. Both suns had set and the cool night began to chill the air. The hustle and bustle of downtown Sentapol had receded. It gave the two companions a chance to return to Ruby's pension house without any interruptions.
"This will work out for us well, Phil," said Felix excitedly. "With someone working for us from the convent, we can get inside quickly and quietly."
"I know," said Phil. "But are you sure we can trust this Cooper and ex-Illumini group? What have they to gain by helping us steal what they think is 1 bar of Bajan silver? Seems like a big risk for them. And what about this person on the inside, Sister Lucy? Can she carry out something like this? She's just a nun."
"We'll just have to go with our instincts. Once we meet her tomorrow, we'll know for sure."
They returned to Ruby's pension house with no distractions. They proceeded into the foyer and there was a different person at reception, but nothing unusual. A gentleman nodded as they entered. They went up into the magno lift, but required to swipe their pass in order to access level 3. The lights were a little dim on the level 3 hallway. They used their electric key and entered the room. The lights were still dark as they entered. "Grab them, now!" shouted a man. 2 men in a dark green uniform moved from the center of the room and manhandled Felix and Phil to the ground. Before either of the 2 crooks knew what was going on, they were pressed to the ground and had their hands cuffed behind their back with hollow chains. "What the hell is going on?" shouted Phil.
"You are under arrest for suspected links to terrorism, treason, and intent on causing wide, systematic unrest to the Sentapol government," announced the man in uniform. He was a sergeant of the Sentapol police, distinguished by the other uniformed man by a 2-star symbol insignia on his collar.
"What do you mean?" exclaimed Phil.
He and Felix were now forced to stand.
"Systematic unrest? Are you serious? I think you've made a mistake, Sergeant."
Phil could recognize his insignia due to previous altercations with the police. "We have observed you two displaying the symbol of the known terrorist group ex-Illumini on your hoverbike. We have also seen you interact with the known leader of ex-Illumini and another known terrorist at the Star Barrels establishment this evening. We have some audio of you and the leader known as Cooper discussing plans to hijack San. Gentlemen, you are in very serious trouble. You will now be taken to our headquarters for further questioning."
The sergeant made the order and the 2 officers proceeded to nudge Felix and Phil out of the apartment and out of the hotel to a waiting police jet car. Phil was still shouting and arguing with the police. Felix couldn't understand what had just happened. It made no sense. Had they been set up? Was it that man they'd bumped into in Despot Lair? The man in the white robes? But there had been no mention of Bajan silver. They had been arrested for links with the ex-Illumini, not for the theft of Bajan silver, or even their plans to steal it back. The jet car fired its retros and launched into the atmosphere. Their destination was Sentapol Police Headquarters, next to the President's Mansion and Parliament Tower, the location of the Sentapol government in the heart of Sentapol City. They headed towards the Sentapol Police Headquarters, distinguished by the symbol of the 2 sons of Prova, Cole and Amp, within a Pentagon banner. They were flying about 1,000 meters above the ground in an air traffic lane exclusive to authority vehicles and high-ranking officials of the Parliament, including the President. Most real air traffic travelled about 400 meters above ground, mostly for foreign diplomats, merchants, religious leaders and other distinguished citizens of Sentapol. Ordinary citizens generally do not have airborne crafts and will travel along the ground or slightly above it for hover vehicles. The city was well lit up below as they passed over Despot Lair, the spaceport and towards the centre of the city and indeed the Sentapol civilization. In the distance Felix could see the towering Kazabo Mountains. Its range spans the planet Prova from north to south in a diagonal direction. Within the mountains are many freshwater lakes, and the largest, Lake Wisatol, winds its way through the tall peaks like a snake, where at the southern end the people of Sentapol obtained most of their water supply. Beyond the mountains, a rain shadow develops that covers almost the entire planet. It is in an inhospitable landscape of hot deserts and cold, dry tundra. Scattered amongst the deserts and between the tundra are isolated oases of tiny lakes, swamped, however, by insect life, lichen and bacteria. Still, some higher forms of life forms exist in these remote, desolate little green worlds known as Kumars. Despite the lack of water on the surface, there is still an abundant source of frozen water beneath the icy tundra, some 20 kilometers below, and the inhabitants of the planet will find enough water to last many millennia. The atmosphere, though, is thin, and together with the small size of the planet and small surface water, oxygen accounts for only 50% of the air. These difficult conditions has made evolution create tough living organisms, and the higher sentinel beings, the people of Prova, are a strong, hardy people with high endurance and capable of surviving without water for several days. The police jet car had reached its destination on the rooftop of the police HQ. Felix and Phil were moved out to a nearby magnolift at the side of the building, but not the main entrance into the building near the central part of the rooftop. "Okay, officers, cover their heads," ordered the sergeant. The two officers put hoods over Felix and Phil to completely cover their face and head. They could not see anything. "What are you doing?" demanded Felix. "You will be interrogated by our secret police," replied the sergeant, "which means we can't let you know of its whereabouts for obvious security reasons." It didn't seem like normal protocol, thought Felix. It was a little bit too strange. But neither was being the suspects of a terrorist group they had only heard of until today. They were led by the officers to the magnolift. Someone pushed the button, and Felix and Phil could feel the weightless movement of the lift as it lowered them down to which point they could not tell. Phil then could sense being lowered into another vehicle. It powered up, but not as loud as a jet car. But its weightlessness was felt momentarily, and Phil believed it was a hovercar, very similar to riding his hover bike. "Drive," a man's voice said, a deep gravelling sound. Not the sergeant, however, but someone else in the vehicle. They moved off, and after about 10 minutes or so came to a stop. This all seemed very mysterious and unorthodox, thought Felix. "Let's go, gentlemen," said the man with the deep voice. "Someone would like to meet you." "Who?" queried Phil with a muffling sound. "You'll see soon enough." He ushered them out of the vehicle, and they were led by two other men, thought Phil, as he sensed the other two officers did not come with them into the hovercar. They were led into another building and then into another magnolift because its weightless sensation is unmistakable. This time Phil thought they were ascending, but for how far he could not tell as the magnolift moves very quickly. They exited the lift and were moved into a large room, from what Phil could tell due to the echo of their footsteps. They were then positioned into two comfortable leather chairs, their hands still cuffed and their hoods over their heads. "Okay, Samson, you can remove their cuffs and masks," said a strong and booming but distinguished voice. It was not an unfamiliar voice to either Felix or Phil. In fact, it was quite familiar, and their curiosity was confirmed when their hoods were removed by Samson, and they saw this man sitting on a chair across the desk in front of them.